So again, we continue with the fourth Nobel. You don't confuse it with the sequence or the chronological order in which the Nobels were allocated over the course of the day, over the week. But anyways, now we come to the medicine Nobel. Now the Nobel is medicine, but it deals more with the genetic nature or the hereditary evolution of the human beings. But what happens is when we study the genome, you might have studied time and again this term genome sequencing is much in the use. So the entire genetic structure, this genome is what makes us, it is common to a particular species. For example, humans. When we talk about the ancestors such as Neanderthals or Denisovans, which is the scope of this discussions, the work on which the people have done, and that has been awarded the Nobel Prize. So if we study the genetic profiling, DNA fingerprinting or finding out the sequence or mapping the genetic structure is not considered to be a remarkable exercise. Anyone can do it, but that is only when the genetic information or the genetic material is relatively available. What will you do when the genetic material is tens and thousands of years old? That is when we are talking about Neanderthals or Denisovans, the ancestors of the humans, the current humans. So in that way, the DNA will not only be not preserved, it is very difficult to find the sources or the means to extract that DNA. So that is the scope of this discussion. So here, Paabo for developing new and innovative methodologies to extract clean DNA free of impurities from human fossil tens of thousands of years old and reading the genetic information contained therein. So again, the application will boil down to how the genetic modification, we talk about genetic engineering, we also talk about the genetic diseases, the hereditary diseases, how they can be counted, how cures can be found on studying the genetic materials. So what was the work done? So this is not exactly an actual person. This is a 3D rendering of what a Neanderthal would look like, and this skull appears to be natural. Anyone? Then he pieced together the genome sequence of the Neanderthal, modern human cousin species that went extinct about 30,000 years ago, and offers new evidence of the interaction of Neanderthals with ancestors of modern human beings. Then in the process, he is working in Germany, Leipzig Institute. Then the existence of unknown subspecies of the human family, now called Denisovans, who lived around the same time as the Neanderthals. This Denisovan related question was also in the prelims a few years back. So some of these terms, which keep appearing in the news, you need to update yourself with them. Then in fact, the ancestors of modern humans, Neanderthals and Denisovans, coexisted for about 20,000 years, during which they not only interacted with each other but also interbred. So this concoction or this interbreeding, this connection with the ancestors, the Neanderthals and Denisovans, and how they have genetically influenced the genome sequencing of the humans. So this is the scope of the work. In some populations of model human beings, between 1 and 3% of the genome has been found to originate from the Neanderthals. So this is an interesting aspect, the Indian connection. A pretty relatively recently excavated site of the Mohenjo-daro Harappan civilization was the Rakhigadi in Haryana. So what happened, this city in Haryana, again, lot of skeletons and a lot of mounds, some utensils, the vessels were found, which gave evidence of the existence of the culture and tradition similar to Mohenjo-daro and the Harappan civilization or the Indus Valley civilization in this part. So when this Professor Shinde, a former vice chancellor, he himself has employed similar technologies but not as advanced. He has not been able to cultivate or come up with an advanced algorithm as advanced as Paabo, the Nobel laureate, used. So he was not able to devise a mechanism to establish the genome sequencing of the DNA profiles of the Neanderthals or Denisovans, which existed 10 or 20,000 years ago. And but he has come up with groundbreaking conclusions, groundbreaking evidence of the genome sequencing in the Indian environment. Then his methodology is slightly different from Paabo's, and it's suitable for obtaining DNA from relics up to 10,000 years old. But the objective is the same. Paabo has even been extremely interested. So there was a time when Paabo has been actively following the excavations or the genome or the DNA profiling that was being done in Rakhigarhi. Then what makes Paabo stand apart? So one important, you can go by the icons. So earlier the normal approach, the common approach of the scientist who was studying the genome material or the DNA material was that they extrapolated, they studied the existing DNA, the DNA of the present human beings or present day organisms, and then they try to extrapolate or try to infer what would have been the genome sequence like in the earlier ancestors. So this is a technique known as deduction. But what Paabo is doing by developing a new novel technique or algorithm, he has found an algorithm or a source by which he can directly observe. The term empiricism, by observation he is able to make a genetic profiling of the ancestors themselves rather than extrapolating the information derived from the present day beings. And again, this icon you can see. So what Paabo has been, because when we are talking about the pure samples in the introduction of this Nobel Prize in medicine, I had discussed about the pure or the clean DNA profile. Obviously, when a lot of impurities, humans come into contact, a lot of other adulterations in the environment come, so that DNA in some way or the other, and especially when the ancestors of whose genome sequencing is to be done, there are 10 to 20,000 years ago, so they can be easily corrupted. So that way he has been able to get rid of the impurities, or he's been able to clean that genetic material to obtain its pure form. And one thing, when we talk about the Indian connection with Rakhigarhi, one reason why Paabo has been successful in assimilating the genome sequencing of Neanderthals and Denisovans is because of the climate in the European conditions where he worked, because they experience much colder climates, so the genetic information and the ancestors as a whole in particular, they are better preserved in cold conditions, unlike the tropical climate that exist in India, where rainfall, moisture, heat and cold, they are variable conditions, and they greatly adversely affect via chemical reactions the nature of the DNA. So here you can just read the points. I've just elaborated upon them. So this otherwise there's not much to discuss in this. So again, some basic concepts back to school. So in order to, this information will make the research interesting, like I have done in the economics, physics and chemistry section. So before discussing DNA, gene, chromosome and cell, first we discuss what is a nucleotide. Okay, there is a term known as nucleotide also. So nucleotide is type of a building component of DNA, which is a building component of DNA or RNA. So this nucleotide, it consists of a sugar. This consists of a sugar molecule and a base. Base can be these ATCG groups, that is this adenine, thymine, then cytosine and guanine. This, if you see this symbols carefully, you can see the image here. So they are attached in particular sequences, and there is one phosphate group also which is attached. And just if you can remember, it's okay. So these nucleotides, they further combine together to make DNA, which is this string of all these nucleotides connected together. So this DNA is what makes every one of us unique, unless and until, of course, you have an identical twin, because these chromosomes, genes, and the genomes, they are more or less common in the, for example, in species such as the Homo sapiens or the humans in general. So this DNA, this helical structure, it comprises of the DNA. It contains, it makes one, it defines what what the functions or what, how we are. Then genes, when we come to genes, it can be treated as a specific paragraph in a chapter. It is specific paragraph which distinguishes one individual's characteristics. For example, the color of the skin, for example, the type of hair, and other physical features, the color of the eyes. So this is determined by the genes, and according to scientists, there are around 23,000 different types of genes. Then this, when we consider this gene as a paragraph, now to form this DNA is an instruction manual, this is gene is a paragraph, and because DNA is so delicate material, this helical structure needs to be preserved, which is being done in the chromosome. So chromosome is like a chromosome is like a chapter which contains the paragraph and the instructions. So this paragraph, this chromosome, it is transferred, like if you remember, 23 chromosomes out of 46 are inherited from the father's side and 23 from the mother's side, so 46 chromosomes. And normally, when I had mentioned the genetic diseases which occur, this normally occurs due to the this normally occurs due to the some mismatch or the improper transfer of the genetic material. And then this chromosomes are present in the nucleus, mostly in the cells. And when we talk about the genome sequencing, we have talked about the instruction manual, the paragraph, and the chapter, and the whole manual consisting of all these chapters, which the whole genome, the whole genetic material of a particular species like humans, when that is combined, that manual or book, it becomes the genome sequencing. So that is the essence of the story, the essence of what the work is being done. So this is the genome sequencing, and what makes Paabo stand apart. Some of the concepts we have already discussed. So he produced for the interbreeding between the different subspecies of human beings in ancient times, which is remarkable. And he identified a skeleton of a human whose father was a Neanderthal and mother was a Denisovan. In another case, he showed that a skeleton was 4 generations subsequent to the mating between a Neanderthal and his ancestors of modern humans. All this can be established through genetics. In fact, Paabo published 2 papers in 2020 and in 21 on the possibility of genes from Neanderthals influencing the susceptibility of human beings to COVID. So in one case, the conflict here which arose was, in one case he found a genetic material in human beings which was capable of protecting against COVID, and in other skeleton he found the DNA or the genetics which did not protect. So you might consider this as a conflict or a discrepancy, but again, genetic material which we are discussing around about subspecies and species spread apart, so such a contradiction is possible. So this is a representation of genome sequence, and this is basically how the genome from the fossils they are extracted. So establishing the genetic evolution of human beings can have important applications for medical science, of course, for the treatment of various ailments such as tumors and cancers, for viruses, COVID also. Then the reason why Paabo's work has been awarded the Nobel Prize. So this was the brief discussion on the medicine.